Blah, 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 blah. Okay, can we do roll call, please, Sherry?
Chair Akins,
Here?
Vice Chair Quinn,
Here.
Commissioner Convery,
Here.
Commissioner James,
Here.
Commissioner McHatton.
Here.
Great. Okay, thank you all. Here, hang on. Turn off that speaker. There we go. If we could get a picture of the flag, otherwise you're going to use the one, we'll use the one over my shoulder. And we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't see a flag showing up yet. There it is. Great, thank you. Okay. If you'll repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you all. Okay, public communications. I'll just read it because we normally do. Public communications submitted by email will be provided to the Historic Preservation Commission at this time. Matters raised at this time may be briefly discussed by the commission and will generally be referred to staff and or placed on a subsequent agenda. Under state law, other than for emergency items, no action can be taken at this meeting. As far as I know, I can't see myself, so as far as I know, the only bit of public communication we received was for item number 2. Is there anything else other than that, Lucas?
No.
There is not.
Okay. Okay, so so the next item is the museum report. Woohoo! Just so you know, folks, because I didn't have enough to do as treasurer, I'm now the president of the board on the museum.
Congratulations.
Woohoo! 11 years. 11 years I held off. So I do have a report from Wendy. As you may all or somewhat know, we are in red now, which is improved from purple, which means that indoor museums can now open. And so the museum, which has a lovely Ojai Studio Artists exhibit that's been put up and is virtual at the moment, can be seen. So starting a week from this Saturday, again, this has to do with staffing, the museum will open. On Saturdays, they'll be open 10 to 4. Sundays, they'll be open 12 to 4. And Fridays, they'll be open 10 to 4. So those will be the only hours available right now until we can find more staffing and eventually open it as it seems best to do. There are changes that have taken place inside with the store, with the desk that you see going in. Things we're waiting for the plexiglass to come in. That's another thing delaying the opening. So you'll see some changes when you go into there. Again, I mentioned the Ojai Studio Artist is currently virtual. You can find that link on the website. For those that might be watching, we have a virtual annual meeting, which will be happening sometime in the next couple of weeks. So that's from the museum. Thank you, Ojai Valley Museum. We almost opened July 10th, and then we didn't. So we're looking forward to this. Items on the consent calendar, minutes of September 10th, 2020. Do we have any corrections?
I move that minutes are accepted as presented.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Great. We'll move on. Okay. Public communication. Lucas, last time we met, we didn't have to have a 3-minute moment of silence. Are we past that now?
Yes, we are. This is a discussion item, which does not necessarily require or mandate that, and it's presentation for tonight.
Oh, okay.
So it's
Yeah, sorry.
informational at this point. There is no action being taken.
Okay. Yep. So we're on number 2.
Yep, on to item number 2. So the second item for on tonight's agenda is the general plan update, and I have Ron Whitmore here tonight to give a PowerPoint presentation. He's with Ramey Associates, and they're the consulting team that's really the driver for bringing this general plan up to speed with current legislative actions, as well as current in terms of the age of our general plan, which he'll talk about more here. So Ron, if you got the PowerPoint, perfect, up and ready to go.
All right, so everybody can see the full screen slide?
Yep.
Great. Well, first of all, I just want to thank the commission for allowing time on the agenda. But also, I want to thank each of you individually. I know what a difference it makes when community members volunteer their time to focus on issues that are, important for them and that they know and care a lot about, and use that to contribute to a betterment of the community. So much of what planning and a general plan specifically are about is really, community development broadly defined. And ultimately that depends on contributions of many, many different individuals and groups across a community. So just want to acknowledge your service to the community and thank you for that. Also got to say that of the 2 homes I've owned in my adult life, both have been historic structures in older neighborhoods. And so I personally very much appreciate the work you're doing and the critical value that the preservation of our historical and cultural assets has for our community across multiple issues, not just for preservation's sake, but economic and just community character and strength in general. Getting back to the general plan update. So we're just kicking off this process, and in talking with Lucas and James, the city manager, about how best to begin both introducing it to people and starting off the conversation across the community, they thought it'd be a great idea to start with meeting with the various boards and commissions around the city. And so this is, I think, number of 3 of 4 so far we've had scheduled, and I think there'll be additional ones coming. And so far they've been fantastic opportunities to hear directly from people who are involved on a regular basis in the critical affairs of the city. And so I got a very short presentation, just enough to kind of orient you to what the project's all about and where it's headed. Because what's most interesting and helpful for us is to, well, certainly make sure you have any questions answered, you're clear on the process, but also just hear from you about from where you sit and from the types of issues that you're involved in, to share with us how you see the priorities facing the city, the challenges facing the city. It's really helpful for us to get that foundational grounding in some of those critical issues. So for tonight's presentation, really just have 4 main topics we want to cover. First, a quick overview of the general plan and the update process, and then talk a bit about our plans for engaging the broader community in that process. Share with you just a little snapshot of existing conditions in Ojai. It's pretty high level and not comprehensive, but did want to give people who may not be familiar with planning generally or general plan specifically an idea of the range of topics, that we touch on. But then again, just leave time at the end, time permitting on your agenda for Q&A and discussion. So first of all, what is a general plan? It is the long-term policy document for local governments. It is a guide for future decisions and action by the city. And its foundation really is a vision for the city for the next 25 to 30 years. Typically, general plans can be updated every 10 to 15 years, but it really varies. You'll see in a moment that it's been a while since Ojai has done a regular update. And the purpose of the updates is to really make sure that the general plan and its various components does everything it can to preserve and enhance community assets and strengths, while at the same time addressing critical issues of concern. And And in doing so, it's a great opportunity to bring the community together across all segments of the city in a community conversation about those issues and what to do about them. And then capture all of that in a plan that's adopted by ordinance by your city council. State law mandates much of what goes into a general plan, and there are 8 required elements. You see them listed on the page here. And they cover quite a range of topics. And just so you know, circulation is not limited to transportation. It also includes other infrastructure systems. And safety includes hazard mitigation, and most recently, climate change, vulnerability assessments, and adaptation and resilience strategies. So as I mentioned, the general plan, or Ojai has some older elements in its general plan. It's got 9 currently. Some haven't been updated since 1987. The most recently updated is the housing element, because it's now required by the state to be updated on a regular basis. Per the council's decision, this is not a comprehensive update to your entire general plan. This is a focused update, focusing specifically on land use, circulation, housing, safety, and a new requirement, environmental justice. As I kind of mentioned earlier, an update to a general plan is a really great opportunity for a community. It's a time to have a community-wide conversation about its future. And in doing so, address some really critical topics. Here's just some examples, mitigating hazards, preserving community character, maintaining your vibrant downtown, and all communities face this fundamental question about how to balance quality of life with economic development. Updates often are required to address new state requirements, and since your last update was done, there's been 2 critical ones: environmental justice and climate adaptation. And there are also opportunities for a city to organize, align, and make sure there's consistency among the various components of its planning, code, and policy system, including everything from the zoning ordinance to various specific or area plans that may have adopted, design guidelines, various plans and strategies related to transportation. You have a complete streets policy, and other plans and initiatives. At the end of a general plan update process, when the general plan is adopted, we'll have been successful if the community has been very active and engaged throughout the process. And in the process of coming together, has come to some consensus about where it would like to see the community going. And also along the way made some tough decisions, considering trade-offs about different options for how to move in that direction, how to achieve that vision. And some of those tough decisions have to do with growth and character across different parts of the city, and how best to advance equity, health, adaptation, and resilience. I mentioned earlier the housing element needs to be updated on a regular basis. It's part of this update. And it has to both accommodate and be aligned with current state law, but also anticipate changes in state law. If you follow the legislature, you know that they're constantly adjusting housing-related policies and programs. And as I mentioned, integration with the rest of the city's documents and policy framework is important. And also a general plan needs to be very implementable. It has to be framed and organized in a way that policymakers find it easy to use and guide their decisions, whether they're talking about changes in zone or budgets, but also for people in the community to pick up and use, as well as city staff who need to be reviewing permits, assessing applications on a regular basis. It should be very easy for all those users to pick up and use for their day-to-day business. We're taking a 5-phase approach to the general plan update, and it's very kind of sequential and a kind of a building block approach, each step building upon the one that preceded it. So we first start by a lot of listening and learning. It's really an opportunity to get our head as a project team around the baseline conditions in a community, and at the same time, we do a lot of listening in community. Just this week, we launched a couple of surveys for the community. One is inviting people to map assets and issues around the city, and the other is asking about strengths and areas of opportunity. And so that's a great way for us to get an initial read on how people in the community see priorities and challenges. That then becomes the foundation for bringing the community. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question. So you just made a survey available to the community,
Yeah.
to our community?
Yeah.
Where can we see that?
Yeah, it's actually the final slide has a link to it.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm like, oh, I missed something? Go ahead. Thank you.
I think many of the announcements just went out in the last couple of days.
How were they got? Did they go out through email or how were they sent?
Email, social media, press release.
Yep, all the above. So and Ron will go into this for the last slide in terms of how to get plugged in and even how to get updates regarding the general plan update as we move forward.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay, thank you.
That's great. That's my closer, is like, get involved, and you're anxious to do so. That's great. That's what we want. And we actually will ask that you spread the word amongst your networks as well. So if you're part of a museum group, or you may all be part of other organizations, please do spread the word, forward the email when you receive it. But anyway, so that foundation then is the stepping stone for moving to the visioning phase, where we bring the community together in a workshop and through other means to come together and really agree on shared guiding principles. And those principles then help us define a variety of different alternatives for the community to consider for its future. So those alternatives are different mixes of land uses, investments in infrastructure and facilities, housing, distribution, and each produces different outcomes. And so it's a time to look at different options for the city's future in a very concrete way and compare how they perform relative to the guiding principles. We then, based on that, take to council what sounds like the community's preference for a preferred alternative, and they choose that, which then becomes the foundation for a policy framework we develop in phase 4, which then is basically the outline for the complete general plan that we draft and gets adopted by city council. And along with that is a CEQA environmental impact report. And I didn't mention it, but during this process, in a synchronized way, we'll also be doing the housing element update, which also requires approval of HC. Okay, so that's kind of high level. What is a GP? What's the process look like? Just want to give you a little sense of how we are engaging across the community. Engagement is really important. A general plan really needs to reflect what the people of that community want to see. And so we're very thoughtful and deliberate about engaging, providing opportunities at each step of the way, and a variety of opportunities, because we know different people have different preferences, different times of day are more convenient for them than others. So we like to provide lots of options for people to provide their input. We also work really hard to make sure that the input is representative of the demographics of the community. And we know we're successful when at the end of the day, there's a strong sense of ownership across the community. So again, we've mentioned some of these, but just wanted to give you a sense of kind of what both the type of outreach we're doing, as well as the ways in which we're beginning to listen to people, or plan to listen to folks across citywide. So in terms of outreach, there's a website. You'll see the web address here in a few minutes, email blasts, online engagement. There's a fact sheet available through the website, which you see here on the screen. There's a couple of videos you can already see. The mayor introduces the general plan, and we've also given you a short, even shorter version of this slide deck to view in just a few minutes. We've got flyers, social media updates. And then in terms of engagement, we're doing community meetings like this with boards and commissions, and we can do these throughout with various groups and interest groups. But also we've done some one-on-one interviews with council members. Surveys, as I mentioned, are released, and we'll use those probably a couple of different times during the process. And public workshops are a really important piece. We've pivoted a bit with the pandemic, and we now do those virtually. And there's some pros and cons. There's some things you can actually do better, but there are also some challenges in terms of, really taking advantage of bringing people together around the table and having a conversation. But if conditions permit, then we'll do those live as well. And then we'll have study sessions with the Planning Commission and Council. Just to give you a sense of some examples of what these look like, we try to, again, vary the modes, everything from people, going to a pop-up tent and just sharing their comments, the digital map you see on the screen is one of the current surveys that's available, where you can actually put a pin on the map of an asset the community has across a range of categories, or an issue, and then comment about that to tell us more about what that is. So that's the engagement piece. Now, I just want to give you a sense, because not everybody's super familiar with the general plan, give you a sense of some of the types of issues that it addresses, because it's quite comprehensive, even though this is a focused update. And maybe you'll learn some things about your community that you didn't know already. And just so you know, a general plan considers both the city and its sphere of influence as defined by the LAFCO. And that red line is your sphere of influence for Ojai. Interestingly, I've heard a lot about Miners Oaks, but it actually isn't within city limits or the sphere of influence. Here's a snapshot of existing land use. And, planners talk a lot about land uses because they're kind of the foundation for what you see on the environment, on the landscape. Yellow is residential, and the shades of red and pink are the commercial. And then green is typically open space or parks or what have you. You've got a pretty tradition, the nature of your city is kind of a classic traditional neighborhood design with a commercial core surrounded by residential going from higher to lower density. Some interesting demographic trends are kind of in place or in process in Ojai. You're actually, your population has been declining a bit, and it's been aging over the last 20 years or so. So you can see in the chart to the right, the blue is the year 2000, green is 2010, and orange is 2018. The youngest age group, the children and the school-age children, has been declining, as has been kind of that parent age range, 35 to 54, but increasing has been the 55 and older. We also look at various other demographic factors, including race and ethnicity. Housing is always a big topic, and as I mentioned, the housing element for Ojai is going to be updated. Got some fairly older housing stock, which is part of the reason you have a historic preservation commission. And your pace of recent single-family development's been relatively limited, and even more so with multifamily development. What is interesting is to look at the trend over time of homeowner occupied versus renter occupied, and that's been fairly stable over the last 20 years. Also, housing costs is always a critical issue. 30% of your household income spent on housing is typically considered affordable. So for renters in Ojai, the median is higher than that. It's 38%. Just a snapshot of the variety of housing you have. Again, mostly single family residential with some multifamily largely near the center of town and a few other looks like apartment complexes on the outside of town. We always look at all kinds of public facilities, including parks, other facilities, recreational centers, and we map stuff a lot. And so here you can see how the parks you have are laid out in the city. We'll also assess access that people have to those parks, because one of the issues is level of service by community, how much easy access different parts of different neighborhoods have to parks and other city resources. And then, of course, we also consider a range of economic and fiscal factors. At the end of the day, a general plan has to make sure that not only it lays the foundation for economic prosperity, but also fiscal stability for the city. And depending on the structure of your city's revenue system, one way or another, it's dependent on land use, whether it's heavily property tax focused or sales tax focused or hotel tax focused. You need land uses that allow for those uses that then can be taxed to generate revenue that support the city services everybody appreciates. So we look at that fiscal picture, but driving that is this larger jobs and employment and economic picture. And Ojai, again, has been experiencing an interesting trend in terms of an increasing shift over this 10-year period from 07 to 17 of, on a relative basis, an increase in employment in the leisure and education sectors relative to other sectors, particularly agriculture. So that's really all I had. Wanted to keep it short. Imagine people might have questions, but also hope that we have time for you to begin sharing with us how you see the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats facing Ojai. But also if you have any specific suggestions for how best to get the word out and or how best to hear directly from people throughout the process. And I'll jump to the chase here too, just so you know. So there's that website that we talked about earlier. So it's just GP Update. If you go to the city's website, it's just GP Update. I believe Lucas has James added a link directly from the homepage.
Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
Live now.
Yeah, great. So you can just go to the city website, and from there you should see a link directly to the GP Update page, and there you can find the links to the 2 surveys. So, Chair, I'll turn it back over to you to moderate Q&A and discussion, if you'd like. Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. Just one thing off the top was on that map. It shows the Weinberger community or Memorial Garden over there at the Y, Lucas.
Yeah.
I think that's now pretty much been relocated behind the City Hall.
Excellent. That's why we do existing conditions reports, to make sure that the data we have is accurate.
Yeah, I think that's the Children's Memorial, essentially. And that is actually on the city's City Council's agenda next Tuesday. So again, I think that's the one that's been moved directly behind City Hall.
Right. You're talking about the demonstration garden, right?
Yeah, the Weinberger Memorial Garden. Children, it's the one she set up with the small little wood items that basically outline the park there at the Y. It has the 3 rock memorials on it.
Okay.
So, I mean, just from my stance, things that get out are, of course, social media. But in the town we're in, with the high volume and differences of opinions, I think it would be helpful to find somebody that has a feeling for the different Facebook pages within the community and the value of each of those in your outreach. As we saw in the Thomas fire, the best way to find out anything in the valley, even minutely or up to date, was through different Facebook groups. You could pose questions no matter where you were on, say, your house, and somebody would check it. I know I checked everything on my end of the valley. So it was amazing how responsive that was. But again, each group has its own focus. And so assuming that by the title that this is the group you want, I think would be, could lead you to different paths. And the question that I asked to Lucas earlier today is, when you're talking to our commissions, and I'm guessing Lucas will talk to us, what is our role other than the roles you've provided us, that we need to get the word out? We need to know as commissioners what exactly is posted on the page, and pay attention to that, because people do know us and people will ask us questions, and we know people throughout the community that we can get the word out to. So that's something that I feel like I can be doing. Yes, Commissioner.
Ron, is your email available so that we can send you some contacts? You know, there's some Facebook pages and things that I think it'd just be easier to email them to you.
Great.
You know what, Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think best to send them to Lucas.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. So Lucas, if we have ideas, we should send them to you and you'll forward them.
Yeah, send them to me.
Okay, cool.
start there.
Yeah, we're collaborating a lot on this. We're producing a lot of the media, and then the city is pushing it out through their established channels. We find that often works best, so that, getting it from the city as opposed to a party that,
Yeah, absolutely. The other item, and we all got a comment from Craig Walker, who used to serve with us, that had some really good notes about general plan conservation element, and I don't know if you got that page that was sent to all the commissioners. Ron, I don't know. Lucas, did Ron get that?
Yeah, I don't know that I sent that to Ron. He has the entire general plan, though. That it was an excerpt taken from that page.
Well, yeah, but with Craig's changes and Craig's suggestions.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it came to the Preservation Commission, Craig's comments. I mean, for instance, one of the comments, it says, currently, apparently, it says no demolition or alteration of designated historical buildings or properties shall occur in the city unless they are declared unsafe in the city or unless notice has been given. And he suggested unless approval has been given, consistent with city ordinances, so that the city can't just say, hey, we're going to tear this building down. We noticed you. They have to get approval from somebody, So I thought those were really, really prescient notes to be included with preservation. Because as Ojai becomes more valuable, more developers come in, it just becomes a bit of a war. So you might, Lucas, maybe we can include those comments for Ron to take a look at.
Absolutely. Just to clarify that, and we went through that exercise I want to say a meeting or two ago in regards to 410 Tico. So I think we're all aware of what that implication rises to in terms of the historic preservation law that's currently in fact we've got with our ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
If I could just quickly,
Yes,
I think I mentioned early on that this is not a comprehensive update to all of the elements of the city's general plan. And specifically the conservation element is not included in the scope. However, historic and cultural resources are addressed in a number of ways. One, in the initial environmental background report, we inventory and look at all those, registered properties as well as any other historic landmarks that have otherwise been identified by the city. And then at the tail end, the CEQA process confirms that there have not been any negative impacts on those cultural and historic resources in the same way they do for other environmental resources. Probably more importantly is, that information at the front end will be used to inform much of the work we do around land use and community design. We know in Ojai that, the community character, and so much of that community character is the historic nature of it, is really critical to this community's sense of community and belonging, not to mention its economy. And so that will be part of that broader land use and community design conversation. Mm-hmm. And though the GP won't produce or update design guidelines, it can certainly speak to the need for any changes that might be appropriate. But also, we do need to make sure other elements are consistent with what we update in land use and other elements. So for instance, that conservation element reference, if we end up having a land use policy that speaks to what you mentioned, mm-hmm. we'd have to then also adjust that language in the conservation.
Yeah,
it's sort of state law requires consistency across the elements.
Yeah, if the underlying direction addresses preservation and historic properties in a thoughtful way, that translates to every part of the general plan. I think that's what you're getting at. And that's sort of, I think really important for Ojai's economy and Ojai's ability to stand against the franchises of the world. So.
Which again is one of the unique strengths of Ojai, is that it doesn't have franchises in the town.
Mm-hmm.
No, we don't. So the conservation element that Cindy was talking about and Ron was talking about and that Craig addresses is why I had Sherry send that page out of the general plan to everyone so they could know how that links. Other comments, Thais?
Brian?
Oh, hi, Gina.
Hi. Another section that Craig had mentioned was a program. The city shall identify and designate historic districts where appropriate to preserve the historic character of these districts and encourage development consistent with that character. And then he goes on to say, program, no demolition or alteration of designated historical buildings on or property shall occur in the city unless they are declared unsafe by the city or unless approval has been given consistent with city ordinances. This program shall be adhered to by verification prior to the assurance of a demolition permit or a historic work permit. Potential historic resources shall be registered and preserved according to appropriate federal, state, and or local guidelines for the long-term benefits of city residents. I think that kind of ties in what we're talking about as far as understanding our downtown historic core and understanding the historic value of it as we, as a commission and an ad hoc within the commission is working to talk about the downtown area as a historic district.
But the first word here, potential historic resources, that in the general plan, it just says historic resources and it's the exact same wording, but to put appropriate federal, state, or local guidelines to require that to a potential and not designated, is that possible to do that?
I called and talked to Craig after I got that today. And as you can, in looking through his text, if you see that makes it put it in line by using that potential. And he wanted it, go ahead. Well, just a second, Lucas. But a question I have is, and this goes to both of our people helping us. These are changes that have come up just for that, but that's not a part of the plan update. So Lucas, what happens with what we're talking about? Does it get put to the wayside for 7 years or included or?
7-year itch. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. If there's incremental changes that we're looking at, I think staff can potentially make those. Here's what I don't want to get us lost in the weeds in terms of the goals and policies and programs that we've currently got in place. I think that stuff is potentially getting sorted out through this process and getting the word out through this engagement process that we've got. And that's really what's kicking off this general plan update. And is what Ron had shown earlier. That's key. That's what kind of sets the groundwork for this general plan update. As Ron had mentioned, it's covering specific elements, but all of them are getting an update to the current standards and regulations of government code. And that could even translate to consistency with the Ojai Municipal Code. The only thing is with that, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong here, there's an implementation activities or action plan that'll come out of this that'll identify either the creation of specific programs or workbooks or something that helps to further specific pieces that were identified during the engagement program and throughout this process. And that'll be a part of this whole package as this general plan process moves forward.
Yeah, just a couple quick points there. Well, one is it's great to see how eager you all are, and there'll be time for all these great ideas. We're at the beginning phase of just gathering information. The ideas that you're providing examples of, should be shared during visioning and certainly discussed during plan alternatives. So we appreciate your eagerness, but you're ahead of the game a bit. Related to that, and Lucas, I hope it's okay to mention this. We were talking with the Parks and Rec Commission the other night, and kind of like you, their element isn't being updated explicitly as part of the update. However, they did consider the idea of, as a body, maybe concurrently with the general plan update, taking a close look at the elements that are specific to their scope of work and coming up with some very specific recommendations, which would do two great things. One is they would be great information for us to consider for where they could be incorporated into some of the elements that are being updated. For instance, land use often touches on a range of issues. But also, I mean, you could very well conclude at the same time with recommendations to council for updates to the conservation element, for instance, and that would make for a much more integrated, consistent set of elements. One other quick comment about the implementation question. You know, it's really, you just got to be thoughtful about how you approach implementation. A general plan has authority to do lots of things, but not everything, right? And so at the extreme end of things, a community can list all these great things that should happen to implement the vision of the plan, but many of which might be totally outside the scope of its authority. And sometimes I've seen where that raises community expectations really high, like, oh, great, we got it in the general plan, something's going to happen. But then at the end of the day, you know, no one really has to do some of those follow-up actions. You know, so the alternative to that is to keep it higher level, more focused on what the authority that the general plan really has, but separately use the process as a means to advance community-based efforts to do those very things. So I guess part of what I'm saying is don't wait for the general plan if you already know there's things that the community needs to do, whether it's designating the downtown as a historic district or amending the code to make sure that historic properties are not being demolished without proper approval or whatever the case may be. I hate it when I sometimes see communities kind of pause everything while their plans are being updated, thinking that the plan will take care of everything, but that's, not always the safest bet. So.
Okay, Gina, Thais, do you have any comments?
Well, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that I'm just taking a wait and see. I'm really excited for the process, and I'll be here next time.
Okay, great. Gina, yes.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that attracted me to conservation and preservation was it's one of the very few things left that people come together on. I mean, even if you look at Capitol Hill, there are bipartisan efforts that come through with conservation. And I think that when you're trying to do outreach, even though Facebook groups, all these tiny ones, they do have echo chambers within that. And a lot of fringe views and a lot of things that divide us instead of bring us together. And if I think back to like the Thomas Fire, how we all came together and how we, it didn't matter, you didn't help somebody based on who they voted for, you helped them because they were a neighbor in need. And I think that as you go forward and you're trying to think of outreach, that you should think of what unites us as a community and what we all love and what's all important to save instead of feeding a division. So
that's great. That's exactly right. And you probably already know this, but not only is historic preservation universally appreciated, but it has many co-benefits. Not just the preservation of community culture and history and heritage, but tremendous economic benefits. And that's all been well documented.
Great. Very, very good point. Other comments from any of the commissioners? Nope, I appreciate what everyone had to say. Lucas, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, so Ron, can you go to that last page again real quick?
Oh, nice.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, which slide?
The last slide.
Last one. Oops, sorry. Yeah. Get the website down. Whoa, sorry, too fast. Let me fix this. There you go. How's that?
Perfect. So here it's showing the web page, which is ohaicity.org/GPU or GP update. And if you go to our homepage, there's three links that are hyperlinks. and it's the third one on the homepage, very front. So you'll see that. You click on that, it'll take you directly to the general plan update page, and that's where you can get a lot of your resources. There's a couple of videos on there, and then if you want to sign up to get additional information, that's located on the right-hand side of the web page as well. So it's a great resource. It'll continue to be updated as we move forward in this process. So it is I would say the foundation for the information, aside from going directly to me and then me reaching out to Ramey and Associates. So yeah, it just launched on Monday. We've been working on it over the last, I want to say, almost 2 months to get this back up and moving forward. So anyway, that's what I wanted to mention. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Can you guys see the GP update website?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a mayor's message, which is about 7 minutes long. And it sounds like that's a long time, but I tell you, when you start listening, the 7 minutes goes by like that. So it's definitely worth a listen. And then there's obviously the overview regarding the general plan video, which is worth listening to, which is great as well.
And please sign up for updates. If you're interested in getting updates specific to the general plan update, please do sign up here as well.
Absolutely.
And then there's other information and links.
In talking about Facebook, do cities ever put up their own Facebook dedicated site to the general plan update?
We have our own account, and we do media blasts to that as well.
Uh-huh.
And I think we've already done that actually in the beginning here, and we'll continue to do that through Facebook.
There was a good point made earlier, though. There's an extra step sometimes that's helpful to ask people who are part of particular Facebook groups to, like or, post it so that it, because you really want it to become viral, right, to some extent, right? So it gets spread throughout the community. Right?
Yeah. Now, as a commission, I think and we mentioned this to the Planning Commission last night, just be careful in terms of how that information gets distributed. If you're doing that, I know we've had this conversation before in terms of how information is distributed, and make it very neutral in terms of how that information is being disseminated.
So, Lucas, then if we're posting or commenting on something, do we want to make sure we are doing that as individuals, or is there a time to do that as commissioners?
There are two hats that you're wearing here. That's correct. You are a resident or definitely a player in how this general plan update takes place. And then you're also representing the commission. And you need to make sure that you separate the two. Most certainly.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah. Yes, Gina.
So with our Facebook page, if it's something that I'm just sharing something from a certain list of organizations that I worked out, I can do that. But if I'm going to do it on our official Facebook page, who should I run it by if I want to make sure that it sounds okay before I send it? Or can you send it a email to the people who run commission Facebook pages like myself to just give us a guideline of the wording that you would like us to use so we stay consistent?
Gina, let's you and I talk offline about how to handle that. I know we've talked about this in the past, and we don't necessarily have any guidelines in terms of what to follow and the parameters to stay within. It's really staying within the parameters of the Brown Act and making sure that you're not showing some sort of a favoritism or showing the way in which you would particularly be voting on the item itself. It's
right.
Just providing that information and then saying, hey, comment, this is your opportunity. If you
I feel comfortable writing that, just strictly passing the information along, the links. But if it is coming from our official page, I just would like to just make sure that I'm getting the wording how it should be done.
Yeah,
so I'll talk to you outside of this.
yeah, I don't know that we necessarily have a policy in place currently that I could share with the commission or any of the other commissioners, but that's certainly something to consider in the future.
Okay.
How we look at these this information.
If you don't mind, I'll add, I used to work for city government, and so I'm familiar with, open records and open meetings laws. I guess I just really extra caution you, and I'm thinking about what the attorney shared last night as well with the commission. Sounds like at the state level, if they haven't already, they're about to release some guidance specific to the care that should be taken around social media if you're a board or commission member. And his main point was just it felt perfectly appropriate to get the word out, but he cautioned strongly against expressing any opinion related to anything that might in the future end up on your agenda. And just based on your conversation this evening, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if at some point over the next year, you as a commission consider some specific recommendations related to the general plan update. And I would be sad if some of you had to recuse yourselves from that discussion because you had weighed in on different aspects, related to historic preservation and the general plan, publicly in some way. So I would just encourage you to take great care in what opinions you share publicly relative to your responsibility as a commission.
I would just prefer hitting share from the city page.
That sounds safe.
Great. Okay. Anything else on this subject? Then I guess we thank Ron for coming and sharing this with us and the work he'll be doing with Lucas. And I'm sure Lucas will keep us up to date and let us know when we are to have more direct involvement.
Yeah.
And if Craig's not watching this, I will call Craig tomorrow and just give him an update on how his submittal was handled.
And the other thing I want to say is I'm loving the eagerness. I know Ron had mentioned this earlier. Let's just make sure we're taking the information in, we're absorbing the information, and then we're going to move forward with action. So that's where we're at. We're in the beginning stages here.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for your service.
Great.
Look forward to meeting in person someday, I hope.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Great. Thank you.
You too.
Okay, we will move on to item number 3. Lucas, do you have anything on the staff report on this item?
No, this is an item that has been before the commission previously. And I think it was actually September. Yeah, September is when we brought this forward. We now have a resolution for consideration by the commission for those 4 members is what I think I have here, or 5?
4.
4. 2 for nominations for the historic preservation.
Oh yeah, 5 coming.
Or, I guess it is 5, yeah. And then 3 for the Lifetime Achievement Awards. And those are provided within the draft resolution for consideration by the commission tonight.
Okay. Any discussion by the commissioners? Okay. Do we need a motion then that we approve the resolution and to move it forward, Lucas?
Yes, we would need a motion, a second, and then a vote.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion we move it forward.
Okay.
Second it.
Is it a motion for both, for all of them, or are we separating them between lifetime and yearly?
It's one resolution, so it's all together.
Right.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Sherry.
Adopt the resolution. But who adopted? I didn't hear who made the motion. I couldn't see.
I did. Cindy, Sherry.
Thank you.
Cindy and Valerie.
And I got Valerie. Thank you.
Okay.
Discussion on the motion in the second.
Can you call for the vote then, or call?
Chair Akins?
Yes.
Vice Chair Quinn?
Yes.
Commissioner Convery?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McHatton?
Yes.
Motion passes and we'll get it to the city council.
Okay, so then I will look for that too. Generally, it goes to the city council. They
For ratification.
ratify it, and then typically we do the presentation the first meeting of December. Of course, that's what we've done in tradition for all the many years, but we have a vote between now and then, and things may change. Okay. Next item, informational item number 4 is for the Downtown Historic Ad Hoc Committee Progress Report. I missed our meeting. Gina, do you have an update for us?
Not really much of an update. I don't really have anything to add to from last month, but Lucas, can you take off Cynthia's name off of the top there so we stay within a Brown Act? We have too many members on there.
That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, because right now, who do we have on the Downtown Historic District Ad Hoc? It is Chair Akins and yourself,
Me.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can. Okay.
And then Craig Walker is assisting us as a private citizen.
Okay.
Thank goodness. Always happy to have Craig. Okay, great, thank you. I love the future agenda item list there. Lucas, cancel this meeting, cancel this meeting.
Consideration.
Vacation.
Yeah, at this point, we don't necessarily have any items. I might be jumping a little bit ahead here. Oh wait, no,
Could I make one comment? That we have had a couple of inquiries for new signs for new businesses. So if they do come in, we likely hold it for their sign permit, but if they're not submitted.
Yeah, signs as well as the, there was the stop work order that was issued and citations that have been issued for the Human Arts.
The application came
site,
in
which is
today.
246 East Ojai.
The application was submitted today.
It was.
Yes, this afternoon.
That's encouraging. I was moving towards an additional citation because they continue to not move forward. So it sounds like we're putting their feet to the fire. So that's good. So that could very well be us having a meeting in November and or December, depending on their submittal package. So consideration ? Currently for November, December.
Okay, and they did make it official that Ojai Day is no longer happening, but the Mandala in the street will take place. And that's fabulous news.
I don't think it's not. It is because I'm working with the individuals currently to get that organized and going. So yes, that is definitely happening. The mandala.
And with Ojai Day, the one contribution that the commission always brings to it is opening up the jail that one time a year. So we are working behind the scenes with Brian to get him in his little jail uniform and record himself and hopefully get that up for the public to virtually visit the jail this year.
Great.
The best news is, Thais, I still have Rob's outfit, which was a much higher quality than the outfit I wore. And so I know where it is in the garage. So,
okay.
Yeah, tell Rob it may rise again.
You're welcome to it. So.
Thank you. Okay. Planning report. Did you just give that to us, or do you have something more, Lucas?
I did. I jumped the gun a little bit with the planning report, but that was also kind of tied to the agenda for the future.
Okay. Commissioner comments. Comments? Yes, Cindy.
I don't know if any of you have seen the art show at the Basic Premise Gallery on Ojai Avenue. It's next to the Ojai Pub. It's just a window installation. You walk by and it's called the Ojai Gift Shop. And it's like a kind of tongue-in-cheek fake Ojai gifts. But there's a lot of history in there. You know, Vicky from the thrift store donated all her Krishnamurti tapes, and they have a mock-up of a book called The Ojai Jail, One Cell at a Time. And they have Ojai for Dummies, and my daughter did the show. She's getting her master's in art, so she grew up here. So she's collected all this stuff, and we all put in our crazy Ojai donations. But it's just a walk by, and it's fun. On Friday and Saturday night, it's lit up, and there's a big stand outside that you can put your head through, and you're in an Ojai scene. You can take your picture. It's one of those photo op things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like very Buddhist. But I just think you should walk by and see Brian if you want to use the Ojai Jail one cell at a time book in your jail presentation, even though it's not real.
That's great.
Where is that, Cindy?
It's at the basic premise. You know where the pub is, the Ojai pub?
No.
On East Ojai Avenue. It's across from the Ojai Beverage Center, Ojai Beverage Company.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, you know where the Ojai Beverage Company is.
Yeah.
So it's just directly across the street from Bryant Street. And there's a gallery there called the Basic Premise.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's funny.
I'll reach out and contact Perry, because that might be something that would be, just kind of a local interest story to them, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. It's gotten some press in Ventura and LA, so I'm surprised that that the Ojai Valley News hasn't done it yet.
Yeah, I am too. That sounds fabulous.
It's funny.
So anything else from one of the commissioners? Thank you for that, Cindy. A couple things that happened since we last met. I got a phone call. I think it was, today's Thursday. I think it was a week ago, Friday, from Bill Wyrick. He was hustling to a meeting out of town, and he said, somebody just took out the Sespe wall. You might want to go check. I hadn't been able to. So I ran up there behind the arcade for our historic rock wall, and met Perry Van Houten, who also had been called by Bill Wyrick. Apparently a young man was getting water, and in his, I think it was described as a Grand Am, thought he had his vehicle in park. He didn't. Fortunately, it was 7 a.m, and it rolled through the parking lot and knocked that smaller section that's right there behind the main building over in basically one piece. And so the city was very quick about getting somebody excellent out there to take it apart. It had no rebar in it. It has been there for over 100 years. From a building in Ventura that was originally built, I think, in 1874, the county building. And so it has been, it'd be fun for you to go by and take a look at it compared to the old one versus the new one, just that small section, and see what you think. So,
wait, did the city already repair it, Brian, or they just picked up?
Yeah.
No, they took it apart. What was interesting was that the city at the city lot actually had that rock, some extra parts of that rock in the city yard.
Oh, cool.
Good.
And so they brought pieces over, and they had, I think maybe Lucas they had looked at Google Maps pictures of it and used that to try to recreate it the best they could. And to me, it looks fabulous.
Look, Street View has been amazing, right? It provides you with a little bit of a history of some of the relics that we have here. And it helps with recreation.
But it was funny. It was funny seeing that laying on the sidewalk. Poor kid. He's got quite a bill coming. The other thing, you mentioned the Art Commission. Again, looking through the newspaper, the Art Commission now has 3 self-guided tours, and I haven't taken a look at them, but they are available online, and something that somehow you can take that tour maybe and play it on your phone or something and use that as a tour guide for art, and 3 different art tours in downtown Ojai. And I think that's just fabulous. And I also think it's, something that we could do at some point, because right now the museum's art tours on Saturday are closed, of course, with COVID taking place.
Mm-hmm.
But the museums will be opening up now, right, Brian?
It will. Our museum's going to open a week from Saturday. Has anyone happened to see that art tour yet? No?
Yeah.
And it was Drew Mashburn that pointed out to me that Thais's home is in one of the recent publications, Thais.
The OQ, Ojai Quarterly.
Oh, the Ojai Quarterly. And that you have some metal structure from historical structure that's somehow embedded in your house?
Well, not in the house. It's a studio, but it was a service station downtown Ojai in the 40s and was moved here like early 50s.
Do you know where that service station was located?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of an urban legend, so, but I think it's true because you know how a service station, and I'm not speaking about a filling station, but a service station has bays for the car to drive in. This structure has two bays, but I took out the wall between them, so there's no wall there anymore. But then there's the doors. One was changed to a window, and one is changed to a French door a long time ago. So anyway, it still is the metal structure underneath stucco.
Wow.
I'll see it. Come on by.
That's fabulous. Yep, have to do that. Okay, anything else that anyone has? Great. Well, thank you all. So my gavel's someplace. We'll just count the meeting closed. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.